Hi, I'm back. Well, I just had a few thoughts that I want to additionally share, and that is the myth of unwillingness. So, one of the things that comes across in medicine is that from a very early age or stage of our medical training, a lot of doctors are kind of indoctrinated into a culture where we get this kind of a pessimism imposed on us that, or just experiences where people talk about diet, lifestyle changes, and other kinds of behavior changes, and they very oftentimes see that patients don't make changes. And I just wanted to say that as I was thinking about and describing all of these various complications of diabetes and so forth that I've had the misfortune of watching people go through, and I say misfortune only in the fact of it kind of gets you in a way that you think about all these things being so preventable and so unnecessary, and yet you're there at the bedside with people who are honestly suffering from these various maladies, and your heart just kind of goes out to them at that time. And the thing that I have found time and time again is that when people have an adequate understanding of what's going on with their disease and what's going on and what they can do proactively to help with managing their condition, that lifestyle changes that people sometimes say, oh, I could never do that. Well, when given adequate information, understanding, support, references, resources, and love, basically people transform their lives, and I see it all the time. I was just telling one of my friends here that I've spent 4 years in Mississippi in the heart of diabetes land, and trust me, I had a lot of patients on my panel with diabetes. I have some here too, but it certainly was more in middle nowhere, Mississippi. But anyway, so the thing is that I found is that when people are given the information and the reason and the power and the knowledge and the know-how of things that they can do to change their lives, even after they've had a heart attack or even after they've had the diagnosis of diabetes, basically they can be brought back and maybe also encouraged to make these lifestyle changes. And I've witnessed with my very own eyes 2 people in my close circle of friends who've had heart attacks and then went through the Dr. Esselstyn training program. Esselstyn and Ornish have very similar training programs. And not only were they both able to reverse their type 2 diabetes so that they didn't need medications anymore, but also on imaging, they're able to open up the blood vessels to the heart directly. So I'm not saying that everybody is going to be able to make, these major changes, because not everybody wants to. However, the myth that nobody will make any changes, that it's kind of futile to sit and talk about the diet and the exercise, the diet and exercise corners of the triangle, I think is definitely a myth, because I've seen so many cases of complete transformation. People have lost lots of weight, people have engaged on exercise programs, and people have made tremendous changes to their life, stopped smoking and so forth. And so I want to encourage you. I just spent about 10-15 minutes talking about some of the consequences and the importance of why it is so darn important to, one, prevent, but then once it sets in, to manage the type 2 diabetes. And so I want to give you all a little extra glimpse of hope to say that, okay, no matter what you've done in the past that has led you to this point, if you do something totally different, as one of my patients said, basically he had to turn his diet, if this is him standing, completely on its head. And when that happened, basically a lot of the diseases that were caused by this American diet, were caused by these lifestyle choices, they just started to melt away. I've had other people with that diabetic neuropathy that when they adopted this diet pattern, one of the things I didn't mention in the last video is Yes, we think it's a lot to do with the red blood cells are too sugary and that get damaging and cause trouble to the nerves. But there's also something about trans fats. Now, trans fats is kind of a buzzword. A lot of people have heard of it. They know that it's like really, really bad for the heart, but they might not know why it's bad for the heart. And it's also bad for erectile dysfunction as well, because when these fatty globules get lodged into the blood vessels, regardless of whether it's blood vessels to the heart or those more specifically in the groin, or those blood vessels that are going down to the feet and to the small nerve endings that are down there. Basically, when somebody eats a lot of plants and avoids those sources of trans fats, most commonly found in especially lunch meats and animal products, pretty much all animal products are going to have some level of trans fats in them. And oh, yes, fried foods and processed foods also have trans fats. One of the dirty little secrets of our food industry is that they've changed the law so that you're able to have a certain amount of trans fats in your cookies, your potato chips, or your other processed foods, but as long as it's less than 1 gram per serving, and let's say your serving is, this big, so you can, whatever way you manipulate the numbers, you're allowed to label your container as having 0 trans fats because it's less than a certain amount, so people sometimes unwittingly can consume a large number of them. Anyway, back to the original point is that when some of these trans fats are removed from the diet and when a lot of plants and rich fiber sources are added to the diet, basically not only are they clearing out those insulin receptors, but they're also clearing the body from these trans fats, and that sometimes can actually restore some of the nerve function. Dr. Greger in nutritionfacts.org has done a beautiful job of compiling some of the research in that realm, and basically in one of his presentations talks about that research on how those trans fats are able to get cleared and diabetic neuropathy being restored as well. So please keep going, keep learning, and keep smiling, and I hope that for you and for loved ones that you're able to take some of these ideas, principles, and information into practice. Always love hearing about people who are able to reverse problems. Sometimes I'll share people my handouts and give them pointers and directions in the clinic, and then they come back a few months later and say, oh, by the way, my mother had diabetes. She was getting all these infections and abscesses, and she just wanted to say thank you because she's been healed. And it's a lot of fun because knowing that some of these words are able to reach people and able to inspire people to make a difference is extraordinarily satisfying. It's one of the reasons why I'm making these video presentations and kind of putting it out there to a much broader audience, because somebody somewhere will hear some of these words and be able to be inspired to make some positive changes. When I went to medical school, we were taught diabetes, it's a chronic illness. You can never get rid of it. You're once a diabetic, you're always a diabetic. And honestly, these things are incredibly depressing. If somebody has got this identity as being healthy and then they're labeled with this chronic disease, you can't have those sweets that you're always wanting, you can't have this, you can't have that, and oh, by the way, this could kill you in about 1,000 different ways, or death by paper cuts, essentially because of all the different problems that potentially could happen, and then people end up living in fear. And by knowing a little bit more about these ways in which the genes can be turned off, that's another story entirely, but the genes can be turned off for diabetes, the blood vessels can be opened up, the insulin receptors can be cleaned out, and again, I can't regrow your pancreas, but we can make whatever is remaining work just a little bit better, and the muscles work better, and people get more energy, and they feel healthier, and they become healthier from the roots out. So anyway, so below these presentations, again, I'm going to be putting links where you can learn more about this information. If you want to check out the scientific studies yourself, feel free to go in as much or as little detail as you like. But good health to you, and I wish you all the best. All right, thank you. Bye-bye.